what's up, everybody? This is Dave, and I'm joined with my co-host Greg. We are the Unconventional Therapists, and this is your guide to nothing, a place where we talk about absolutely nothing, much like today's topic, but we won't go there yet.
Don't go there.
Because I insist that we have a little banter.
Okay. All right. So what's been
I
going on,
didn't, I
Dave?
didn't, I didn't tell you to start it though.
Oh, okay.
You just assumed you were gonna take
Asked
it
me.
over. Oh, this is Greg's hour. Sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, once I start going, it's
I know it's hard to
getting
shut
me
you off.
stuff. Yeah, it's really is.
So, actually, that can I share something that's kind of funny that came out of last week's episode?
Sure.
I said something to you in that episode. I think it kind of struck a chord, or maybe it really hit home. And then,
What's
like,
that?
you shared it with people at work. I said
What's that?
something about getting a word in edgewise, and you shared that at work with people. I was like, wow, I really struck a chord there with Greg. I
No,
think
look, hey,
people hurt.
I like to be made aware of my shortcomings so that I can kind of address them. Because if that's what I'm doing, I want to make sure I leave the space available. But
Sure.
Dave, since you mentioned this is kind of connected to our subject today. So I had my second therapy appointment. I know that was like 2 months in
Wow,
between.
she had you on a bi-monthly schedule. That's
Well,
amazing.
Dave, he,
He.
yes. But you know what?
Wow.
Today,
Put an egg on my head.
I'm sorry, but he asked me something because we were talking about values and how important they are and how like fun it is to talk about them and all that.
It's
And
super fun.
yeah, it can be.
That's what
And
me
so
and
he
my
goes like,
friends do. We just sit around and talk about our values.
well, I mean, it's useful, I should say. But here's the thing. He's like, I was thinking of like, oh, well, what's good ways to sort of understand your own personal values? And he was talking about all these different things, like a deck of cards. But then he said something that I found like really interesting. And he said, imagine, and I invite the listeners to try this. Imagine you only have 24 hours to live and you couldn't tell anybody. What would you do? I mean, does something automatically come into your mind?
No.
Nothing.
Um, like action wise, no. I know what I would end up doing.
What's that?
Like I would probably go see the people that like I would want to say goodbye to. Even if I couldn't say goodbye, I would want to spend some quality time with them.
Okay, so here's the thing.
People
That's not.
or pets.
Yeah, see, so there you go, Dave. So that's not really highlighting your values in a sense, but it is highlighting what matters.
Yeah.
So it's a cool little thing to figure out. Like
Then I would
that's
commit some crimes.
a quick way to try heroin, maybe
Oh, I
something like
would.
that.
Damn, Greg.
I don't
Wow,
know.
that took
24 hours.
a turn.
Hour
Holy
23, hour 23, you go, you take it, and then you see what happens,
wow.
right? I
Secretly,
mean,
Greg's
after you
been
do all
wanting
your
to do
visiting.
heroin this whole time. Wow, Greg.
Oh,
I
smoke a
am
cigarette. I'm talking about the last hour now. Couple
your
of things
last
out here.
hour. I'd have some great beer
Yeah. Well, there you go. So we're all different. You go
and
with the
some crack
beer.
cocaine.
Dude,
Apparently, if
yeah,
I was
dude, come
Greg.
on. You got to try something. So, all right, Dave, and there's going to be more that I have to kind of talk about to lead into this podcast, but I
Wait,
was
well,
listening.
can I just ask you a quick question
Sure,
about
sure.
this? Now, I just had a thought in my head, and I was like, I actually don't know if I would do that. So part of me was like, all right, well, if it was my final hour, would I do something that I was like so terrified of, and like just to like get it out of my system, like jump out of a plane or jump into water from like a really high distance, like things I'm afraid of. But then I'm like, nah, I wouldn't want to do that at all. Actually, now that I think about it, I would want to stay as far away from any of my fears and any of those things as possible. Right? What would you
Yeah.
say?
No, I think like it was interesting for me. Like it kind of struck a chord with me because like the first thing I thought of was like my kids, and not to be like lame, but I was like, yeah, I would spend more time with my kids, like spend the whole time with them, and then I have to think to myself like, well, how come I'm not doing that in the rest of the hours that I'm alive? If this is the most important thing to me, like, and this is what really the only thing that matters, like, how do I not prioritize that more?
See,
And it's
there's
complicated.
a message right there.
Yeah, it's complicated though, right? I
It's not.
mean,
It's not.
I know.
Just do it.
That's a self-deceit. That's like, oh, it's complicated though. I start making reasons why I can't. That's unhealthy, and I should
But
just
that's
kind
what everybody does,
that's what
right?
you have
And
to.
I mean, that's an overgeneralization, but that's what so many people do.
Yeah.
They come up with 1,000 reasons. I mean, I do it. Like everybody, I think so many people do it. I shouldn't say
Hmm.
everybody. So many people do it.
How many people would say, "Oh, I'd go work 12 hours. Work 12 of those 24." Yeah,
Actually,
right.
yeah, probably
You
know
know.
a couple, a couple of people. You know, yeah, yeah. Interesting thought. How are those? How's that second session? Did it hit?
Um, I'm enjoying it. I'm kind of like using it as a learning tool too, and I think that that's probably what people should do, but it's
There's there's the self deceit. Go
I
ahead, Greg. Tell us
know.
more. Tell us more about how you're using it as an experiment for
Yeah, I know.
therapy.
That's true, right? That's true. Like if I'm sitting next to someone in the waiting room, I'm like, this is what do you I don't really need to be here. This is just an experiment.
Yeah, I'm just taking
I'm not stressed
notes.
at all as my legs tapping up and down. You know,
Here's what I need you to do. In 2 months, when you go back for your third session,
yeah, yeah.
I need to hear about the third session. You want to know
So
why?
insane. Why?
All right. I'm convinced the third session is the hardest session.
Mhm.
First is all right for me. First is easiest. I love the first one. It's information gathering. I get to like use a little charisma
Mhm. Oh
and
wow, that's
also
easy.
show off a little
Humble
bit.
brag.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I totally try to like
Yeah.
as much as I can, give them a little riz.
Yeah.
Um, but I like to like kind of go in and be like, this is what we're going to work on. This is how I see things. Are you in agreement? And like a lot of times I feel like I get, some agreement and it's like, awesome, cool. Session two is like a little bit of a continuation, not too bad. Kind of give me some more of the details. Session three, the pressure is on because now it's like, I got all the information from you.
Hmm.
Now we actually have to do something here. And if you get a patient that comes in and they're not a talker, it is brutal.
Yeah, session three, you're like, at the end of session two, you're like, well, that's all I know. Right?
Yeah.
Essentially. I mean, honestly, like, and then,
It's like I really
there is
wish I didn't
this
give so much in the first two because I'm
look,
really
I'm
struggling here.
learning that. I'm learning that to not kind of hit him with, you know, 13 metaphors on the first day. And then you're like, how do you follow that? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
at
I
least
feel
some
like
gas in the
session
tank.
three is tough. And they're looking at you and they're like, oh, I feel pretty comfortable with this person. But they're like comfortable, but they really don't know you too well yet.
Hmm.
And like now they're going to see you squirm a little bit. And I feel like in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, they're judging me. They're
Of
judging
course. Yeah.
me.
And they probably are.
But maybe they're not.
Hmm.
It could be
Yeah,
could be my
yeah, they could
cognitive
be.
distortion, or they are. Thanks, Greg. All right, Greg, go on with the topic for the day.
Well, all right. I'll say this. I was listening to a podcast completely unrelated. It's not about what we're talking
And it
about
was
today.
called The Unconventional Therapist Guide to
It
Nothing.
was actually called Noble, which is interesting. But the whole thing sort of opens with the premise: what do the living owe the dead? I like that question. Like it kind of struck me and it kind of made me think like, well, this is how we can kind of answer this question by talking about what we're going to talk about. Firstly, Dave, let's talk about spirituality. So, spirituality to me, and I want to know what it is to you, is either a search for truth or even in some ways, I think it's a hope that we don't have all the answers. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's almost like this thing where we hope that there's more than just what we see in front of us, right?
yeah.
It's a word that we all use, and there's a variety of different intentions and ways that we sort of conceptualize what spirituality is. It's important to most of us, even people who are very skeptical like you. We all, I think, agree on its existence, yet we mock the study of spirituality and all its various elements. It's considered a pseudoscience, and that pseudoscience is called parapsychology. Now, Dave, when I say spirituality, like what does that mean to you?
Um, it actually, I'm glad you asked. It means quite a bit.
Okay,
So,
good.
and I've actually been having a lot of conversation about spirituality lately because I feel like it's a rather important thing that is society over the past however many years feels like we've been losing or stepping away from a little bit. And I've shared that with you in some conversations. Um, and now I'm really like starting to see the need for it. And so part of what your definition was or what your explanation was is kind of how I see it. It's like that belief of something larger than us or that there is something more, right? And I don't know exactly what that is and I haven't fully formed my opinion about it, but I think it's also super necessary because it highlights two things. First of all, highlights that all the struggle and pain and suffering of life is for something and it's
Yeah.
not for nothing. Like I think I shared this at one time, like that existential, like if we're just feeling like we go into the dirt and then our eyes are shut and there's nothing, that can be a really scary thought. So it
Mhm.
provides a lot of like reassurance and um, a lot of different things. The other part of it is also that like there's something larger than us that we're doing this all for, right? Because I think, and I can't remember if we had this conversation already, but like one of the thoughts I've been having a lot lately is it's almost like without that belief of doing things for a larger purpose or something outside of ourselves, it really is like the causation of narcissism in our society, I feel.
Absolutely, and, it creates a society almost like hedonistic, but it creates a society
Yeah,
that's like, they want happiness, but when they say happiness, or they wanna feel good, which is essentially pleasure, which in the end is a shitty value.
that's a huge part of it. I'm glad you used that word hedonistic because that's actually I hadn't thought of that, but like that's kind of part of what I'm trying to capture when I'm like formulating this thought. It's a very pleasure driven
Mhm,
society I think is kind of being created. You see a lot of it on like social media and like that whole attitude about working on myself or self love. It's
uh-huh.
great. I think people need to love themselves, but we can't believe that we are the most important. I am no more important than you, than my
No, certainly
neighbors.
not.
You know, it's like I can't feel like so I heard somebody share this back to me when I was explaining this, and they were like, when it's almost like it's like gives us the ability to wrong someone or hurt someone or harm someone, and then say, well, I had to do it for myself.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but
Which i which is
I have to love
no,
myself.
which is living in a way where you're trying to feel good, like we're talking about. But the opposite of that, and what really makes you like in a spiritual sense feel good, is by doing good, not feeling good.
Right. Right.
And that should be the the idea, because by doing good, that's genuinely feeling good.
So I've pitched this idea, and I don't know if networks want to pick it up, but instead of Love
Okay.
Island, it'll be called Volunteer Island. And it's just a bunch of people going around volunteering and finding love at volunteer locations, like animal
You
shelters,
might have something
soup
there.
kitchens. That was actually just now I thought of that. So
Yeah. Volunteer Island, it could be good. So, back to parapsychology, and actually great conversation, Dave. Thank you for that. Thanks for sort of going down that road. Um, so here's some sad things about parapsychology. There's no current way in the United States to get a degree in parapsychology.
yes, I heard
That
this.
that's not cool. There's fun electives, which, Dave, that leaves an opening for a couple of guys who could make a class on parapsychology, right? But think about this though. In Europe, in Edinburgh of all places, in this old sort of, I mean,
Castle,
imagine castles and Jekyll and Hyde and, you know,
top
grave
hats.
robbing, like the home of all this stuff. I know it's London, whatever, but there is a college, an esteemed college, at the University of Edinburgh where there's a parapsychology unit, right? I mean, can you imagine? I mean, the job market's probably tough, but I have a degree I got in Edinburgh from, yeah, just can you imagine that? Like just going, that's what your
Yeah.
whole role is. That's like the most interesting person in the world, I think. Like it's just awesome. Even in London, there's something called animalistic psychology, which isn't,
No,
pet,
anomalistic
right, for anomalies. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to talk about like
for
pet
animals.
therapy.
Yeah.
Like in that movie, Down and Out in Beverly Hills that no one's seen, there's like a pet therapist. Um, Another market we need to maybe think
Yeah.
about addressing. That could be you. And that just deals with paranormal and other sort of related beliefs. But I think that that's a really cool thing. And it's so strange when we're talking about this that we're basically talking about things, almost the unexplainable, things that we can't really put our finger on. Yeah, we all do. We're saying that we all kind of agree that there is this like spiritual realm that's beyond any of us. Almost all people would agree on that. But there's no way to really, there's no accredited sort of scientific study of this.
Yeah.
Strange, don't you think?
it is strange. I think that it makes sense to me that it doesn't exist here.
I mean, look, here, okay.
An elective, yeah. An actual
Um,
like accreditation, I don't know. It's a lot to envision, like, and what would that be for?
well, look, there's a market for it. I mean,
There
how many,
is.
what do you think the percentage of people that believe in even a paranormal experience?
Yeah.
50%? So say this is something that affects 50% of people. There's doctors for certain, various cancers, which, is obviously super important, but maybe that affects 3% of the population.
Mm.
I mean, I'm just wondering why that this is such a stigma attached to it.
Well, there's just so much debunking that tries to happen. There's so much criticism. There's so little evidence to something. And, we're all about evidence-based practices, right? Like,
Mm.
I feel like that has a lot to do with it. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I
I
mean,
don't know
doesn't
why we're so like,
yeah,
against that, but they would be okay with it. But like, I guess also, like I said, it's like there is a lot of criticism towards that field. And the ironic thing too is like, all right, you study it and then you come up with an explanation, and guess what? It's no longer parapsychology because now it has an explanation
yeah,
behind
now
it.
it's science.
Parapsychology is all about having like an unexplainable experience, right?
What an interesting point. Because I'll tell you, there are things right now that don't have an explanation. Like I mean, you can think of a million things like aurora
Yeah,
borealis or like ball
sure,
lightning or things that all these things that have explanation or dude, even something in our realm, dissociative identity disorder. Like these have scientific explanations now, but before you're throwing holy water at these people
sure.
and
Oh,
right? I mean,
a ton of like mental health illnesses would be considered parapsychology at one point, I guess. Yeah.
so yeah, so I think for that in and of itself, and for the fact that people have been telling stories and of unexplainable phenomena since as long as people could tell stories.
Yeah.
Um, there should be some more. This should be a viable field. If not,
But
this folklorist.
that's where I get confused, because like if the whole point of parapsychology, and we didn't really even define it yet,
Yeah,
but so that would probably be helpful. But
we
if the whole
should, we should.
point of it is like the study of the unexplainable, but like what is the point? Is it the point to make it explainable so then it's no longer parapsychology?
Yeah, maybe the job of parapsychology is to
To
get
make
to like
parapsychology not exist.
almost to make it disappear, and as long as it's here, then it's
They
viable.
have a job, yeah.
Yeah. So, and all right. So, what is it? Good point, Dave. It's the study of psychic phenomena, easily put. So, we're going to try to talk about that in various different, the way it presents in various different ways. And I'll
Yeah.
start by saying ESP. We've all heard of that, right? Extrasensory perception. This is simply having a sixth sense, being able to view things remotely.
Sure.
The government tried to get involved in this with various different like The Men Who Stare at Goats is a movie about it. M6 MI6 or whatever the hell it is. Like every single the CIA, they've all kind of tried to because imagine the asset this would be if you could view something going on, like the spy capabilities, if you were able to view something and not be there.
You just had me think of some brought up like, have you ever seen Firestarter? Or it's a Stephen King novel, Firestarter.
Drew Barrymore, young Drew Barrymore.
Yeah. It's kind
Yeah,
of like how they're all chasing her down because she's like this. I mean, that movie is about parapsychology, I guess.
it sure is. And
There's
now
another
say
one.
something like that presents itself. Who you gonna call? No pun intended, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those guys were parapsychologists.
Yeah.
The Ghostbusters, if no one got that
Sure.
reference. So Dave,
Another version would be telepathy, which is the transfer of information of thoughts or feelings between individuals by means other than the five classical senses. So other than like speech,
hmm,
smell, sight,
yeah, Dale, go ahead and name the census. That's
the
fine.
other ones.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, almost like if you're like
Thinking.
sometimes, Dave, like we could be in a room and there's someone maybe they're talking or whatever, and we have a feeling about them. I almost feel like you can kind of do that. You can kind of your emotions across the room through like a vibe. I don't know. There is something to that, isn't there?
Yeah, but you know what I love?
What do you love?
Um, when people are always like super wrong. Like you never know the one person that's like just really bad at it,
Just
or
not
like
reading you at all.
they go to finish people's sentences and they say the wrong word every time. I love that person because they don't give up either. That's a great person.
Dave, I'm having a weird thought right now too. So do you know
I know
the
you are. I got it.
yeah. So I'm sending it over. What
Yeah,
is it?
I
No, I'm
got
just
it.
kidding. All right. So I'm thinking like, all right, have you ever heard the concept where like say someone's deaf, then their vision improves or like the other four senses kind of like really sort of
Super
improve?
strengths. Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens if someone's like almost a Helen Keller and beyond, if they were born without like any of the senses? Like, do you think like something would develop? Like
Yeah.
some
Well,
extra
all right.
sensory?
Well, with Helen Keller, she
Mhm.
ended up no. Oh my God.
Are you gonna tell a Helen
I
Keller
almost
joke?
just spread some real big misinformation, and that would I'm like not even gonna like say it out loud because I'll embarrass. I just got Helen Keller confused with Temple Grand. Is it
Okay.
Temple
Yep.
Grandin?
Yeah, the
And she
autistic
made
farmer.
the hug machine from the cow squeezer.
Yes. Make the cow feel better right before it dies.
Helen Keller did not make that.
Nope.
So what'd she make? Something else.
Um,
Braille.
she was an advocate. Wow, we know nothing about Helen Keller. That's a future episode. I'm gonna jot that down.
I
Learn
did
more
at
about
one
Helen
point. I feel
Keller.
like I knew a ton about, well, not a ton. I like read a child's book once about her.
You want to know what? She was impressive. I remember that.
Yeah. I know what? Shame on us. Shame
Yeah,
on us. Why
shame on
did you
us.
bring up her name?
I don't know.
Come on.
I feel like she had some kind of power.
Bring up a name that we know of, like facts about
I will right now. Um, not that
Wolverine.
did it, not that I did any research on it, but the next sort of phase or another category of parapsychology would be precognition, and that would
Mm.
be seeing the future. Now, when I think of
Final
famous,
Destination. I just, you did telepathy and I got it. Final Destination is what you
you
were going to say.
nailed it, dude. I was thinking of Devon Sawa.
Yep.
No, I'm just kidding. You know who I was thinking of? No, Nostradamus, the most
Oh,
famous
yeah.
fortune teller of all time. Ed Kemp. No, not Ed Kemper. That's the murderer. There's another guy, Ed something or other, the famous fortune teller.
Ed
Uh,
Sullivan.
what's funny is so yeah, Nostradamus would do these like super vague predictions, but a lot of people thought that he was practicing precognition or able to see things in the future and kind of see them and then sort of have to interpret like what all that means. Because imagine if you're seeing something in the future, he's seeing buildings and airplanes and he doesn't know what the hell's going on. So
He's
he's
like,
just
in
kind
the
of,
future, there will be a big storm. And then
yes.
when a big storm happened, they're like, oh my God.
No, he'll be like the giant will attack the eagle, and it's like that could be anything,
The
right?
Giants versus the Eagles. Yeah.
I mean,
Like, I know we're like giving, and yeah, yeah. Anyways,
yeah, yeah.
clairvoyance
I like this
is
one a
another
lot.
one. You like this one? Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Obtaining information about a place or events at remote locations by means unknown to current science.
Well, here's the thing. If we're to believe Carl Jung, then we all share a collective unconscious. And that's true. We all have certain things we all kind of agree that certain things are beautiful. There's intrinsic fears that we all have. Um, emotions. We all kind of have a similar emotions, similar archetypes. So why can't there be people who can tap into the collective unconscious? And if there's people that tap into the collective unconscious, why can't they tap into your unconscious? Because to have a collective unconscious, that suggests that all of our unconscious have to be like being lifted up into something. Now we're getting maybe dream realms. I don't know. Who knows? But
Too many levels there, too many layers.
yeah, but like is it like, to get a visual representation of your fears, your emotions, your pain? I mean, is that so hard to believe? I guess so, right? Right?
Sure.
Here's one that I've almost tried. Actually, when I was a kid, I was fascinated with it, and maybe you'll know what I'm talking about. Back in the 90s, you would see maybe on Unsolved Mysteries or whatever, maybe even Firestarter, this idea of psychokinesis or telekinesis, being able to, I think famously, bend a spoon. With your
Move,
mind?
move a pencil.
Oh, the craft, right? Twist the pencil onto the
No, I
desk.
was thinking of something else. There's another like popular pop culture source where
Oh,
the
maybe
person moved the pencil. I'm trying to remember what that
Stranger
was.
Things?
Oh, that could be, but it was
Right.
something from the '80s, I think. But anyways, yeah, I absolutely like moving things with your mind. Also, you were probably going to say this: Friday the 13th, Part Seven. Jason basically fights a girl with psychokinesis.
Really? Because I was going to say something, and I really thought when you were kind of leading up, you were going to say what I was thinking. And what I was thinking,
I was going to go ahead.
what am I
I'm
thinking right now? Like honestly,
I'll let you finish that sentence. It was your idea. I don't want to take credit
it's
for it.
someone who is moving the ability to move things with their mind. Go. I'm sending it to you.
Yeah.
Can you get it?
Almost
Guess.
there. I'm almost there.
The most famous person to move things with their mind.
Houdini.
No, I was thinking about Houdini earlier though, because he's a huge.
I was getting an old
Yeah, you're
message.
getting you went too far back. I was thinking of Yoda.
I
Yoda
That's
from
lost on me.
Star Wars.
I've seen one Star Wars
Oh
and
my
I
God,
don't
dude.
know that he moved anything in that one.
Hmm, interesting. So, interestingly though, during the the movement, the spiritualist movement, Houdini was a very anti this. He thought it was preying on people who had lost family members. I mean, a lot of this spiritualist movement is coming up like right after, World War I, really.
Mm,
It's obviously before that too, but people are really wanting to connect with like lost loved ones. But yeah, so
yeah.
psychokinesis, telekinesis, however you want to talk about it.
Okay. And then
Interesting.
apparitional experiences. So phenomena often attributed to ghosts and encountered in places a deceased individual is thought to have frequented or in association with a person's former belongings.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
this would be something that like we would deal with, I would say, probably out of all these, like this would be a topic of conversation at some point for a lot of us, like
absolutely.
therapists, meaning like people coming in talking about grief, talking about like this feeling that a loved one's presence is still around, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah, so people are seeing ghosts and you're thinking about med management and I want to know store. I want to go to the location. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of in. So it's like what if you have a patient who hasn't really like you're not concerned about at all as far as like psychosis
Yeah,
or
yeah.
they haven't had any hallucinations
Had
or
that all the
delusions.
time. Yep.
Yeah, and you're just kind of like, all right.
I'll listen.
Yeah, but like we accept it almost, right?
Well, I mean, if Carl Rogers taught us anything last week, it's to be non-judgmental, right?
That's true. So, Dave, this is the coolest, best part. Like this whole paranormal thing that you're talking about, the claims of ghosts and ghost stories and vampires and werewolves and folklore and all this great stuff. Now, this is all under the umbrella of parapsychology, which I think is so cool. Um,
But I have to correct you there.
sure.
I actually read that most of the stuff that you just mentioned is like in that last piece is actually not according to the parapsychology psychological association. Parapsychologists are do not study uh paranormal phenomena, or are they nor are they concerned with astrology, UFOs, cryptozoology, paganism, vampires, alchemy, or witchcraft. So
Yeah,
that
see, that's
stuff's not part
insane.
of their jurisdiction in that
Well, then
association.
who covers that? We do.
Dark psychologists.
Now, you mentioned something there that I find fascinating, and there's like another fun part of this in cryptozoology. Now, are you familiar with that at all?
Oh, I love cryptozoology.
Yeah, like a
And
Bigfoot.
I just learned of a new one recently, and I'm like really all about him.
All right, what is it?
Frogman.
Um, I'm into it.
There is a movie that came out called Frogman, and the guy that created, I got to chat with him, and he basically was like looking for a cryptid that already exists, and he was going to make a movie about it. And then he saw a map, and on the map it had like every state's like cryptid
Yeah, yeah,
character,
yeah.
like you said, Bigfoot, the Yeti,
Loch Ness Monster,
yeah, Mothman, and then
Chupacabra.
he saw Frogman. And he's like, I have to learn more about Frogman. And he went there and he was like, this it's a very it's like almost looks like a frog with like a wizard's hat, and it's interesting.
I like the Jersey Devil's a scary one.
I like the Loch Ness monster, to be honest with you. That's one that I always like. I was Nessie and all that. Like
Yeah, or
I was always
Champ,
interested.
Champ in Vermont.
Is
Sort
that
of,
a
it's,
Bigfoot
it's
type guy?
no, it's a
Oh
similar,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no,
yeah,
no.
like
Lake Champlain. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Got you. Yep, yep.
So that's pretty
Yeah,
cool. They're everywhere.
I love that stuff.
I do too. I think even Bigfoot can't be its own episode, but man, remember that show where people
Cryptids
would
should be an
cryptids
episode.
cryptids should be. I mean,
That's fun.
is Skinwalkers a
I
cryptid?
I got to imagine it would be right.
Right, and like the Thunderbirds, things like that. I
Yeah,
mean, really cool stuff.
yeah.
Um,
I want to correct myself. I think I might have accidentally said that they don't study paranormal phenomena. It's not that they don't study paranormal phenomena, they don't study all of it. So there might be certain things that don't fall into like what they're going to go study. Like they
no, I
don't go
get it.
they don't consider themselves, from what I'm gathering, this organization does not consider themselves ghost hunters. However, I have heard people who do consider themselves ghost hunters consider parapsychology, like consider it under that umbrella of parapsychology. So I think there might be, depending on like where you align, that could be a little bit of like a difference in opinions.
Okay, okay. That makes sense. All right. So, of course, and then we don't really need to, we just kind of brush across the near-death experience because we did a whole episode on that. So, if you're
I kind
interested in
of
that,
forget about that episode.
oh,
Jeez.
great episode. I hear a lot of good reviews on that episode. Great
How
episode. I
was I in
enjoyed
that
it.
one? Was I
You
pretty good?
were on the money, as usual.
Absolutely. I'm sure I was.
Uh,
So Greg, oh, all right. There was just one thing that we didn't really mention. So parapsychology is divided into two main branches. There's the extrasensory perception, the
mhm.
ESP, which is the study of communications without known sensory organs, and then psychokinesis, or the study of physical events that apparently occur without involvement of any recognized motor organs. So parapsychology itself is divided under those two main branches.
And then
Um,
when you're dealing with a poltergeist, you're crossing into both realms because they're sort of an apparition as well as um poltergeists are ghosts that move things and throw
oh,
things and create. Yeah, so it's
likey.
yeah, pretty cool. Um I think poltergeist means like something like loud spirit or something like that. Anyways,
Let me get into a
don't
little brief history on
yeah,
parapsychology,
do a little
real
brief
quick.
history.
All right, just real quick. The term itself was coined in 1889 by a philosopher named Max Dessoir, as the German parapsychology with an IE at the end. Um, so while the ideas of parapsychology have like deep historical roots, Joseph Banks Rhine has been described as the founder of parapsychology as like a scientific pursuit. And in the 1930s, he and some colleagues at Duke University carried out studies of extrasensory perception using means such as card guessing and dice rolling to seek evidence. Really deep stuff. You know what I
I know,
mean?
but listen though, this is the American side of it. The European side is a little bit older.
Sure. So there, Duke University ran one of the first centers for paranormal research in the world for several decades, the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. It was established in 1935 by J.B. Rhine, and yeah, it ran for a while. But around the 1960s, the academic environment changed. There was some skeptics, and they started to consider it more of a pseudoscience.
Mhm.
And you know, once you say that, it's the end, right? You
Now
throw
you're in there with like
throw the word,
phrenology and
yep, you throw the word
reading.
pseudo in there, and then people are just like, nope.
Hey, listen, how attached are people to astrology? That's a pseudoscience, so they say,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So his labs, they ended up um ending their affiliation with Duke, and he moved his labs across the street, and they continued their work off campus. Um, it's interesting you mentioned
Less
Ghostbusters.
prestigious. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Ghostbusters earlier because actually, I guess Dr. Venkman, his university research team at the beginning of Ghostbusters and their fate of closing, those scenes were actually based on the history of the Duke program for parapsychology.
Can you imagine? Yeah, like,
It's
but
kind of
they,
interesting.
it's so interesting and so cool. And it's still at Duke, that's a place where you can have some electives in the field of
Is it?
parapsychology.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they're tied. They have ties to it, so it
Yeah,
makes sense that
it's cool that they
they
at least
do.
keep that around a little bit, you
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
So, and to even get a little bit like more into the past, there was this cool Society for Cyclical Research, and that's founded in 1882. And the goal of this was to it was an effort to organize scientists and scholars and other smarty pantses to investigate paranormal activity. Like people were talking about this quite a bit, especially in Europe. Europe's old as hell. And people are like, well, we need to study this. Like, what is going on here? And I gotta say, like, there's tons of great like scientists and scholars and philosophers that are involved in this. But one for our purposes is William James, who's considered the father of American psychology. He was very much into this. An interesting character in his own right. I kind of did a little digging on him, and he tried so many things. His brother is Henry James, like a very famous in his time,
Oh,
like
Hank,
Hank James, yeah, like
old Hank James.
a famous during William James's life, like author. Actually, ironically, he wrote like some ghost stories and stuff like that too. Um, but William just kept failing and failing and failing in everything he tried to life. Like went to his father was rich, so he tried to go to Harvard, and that didn't work out. Nothing really worked out until William James was going to commit suicide and he felt really kind of down on himself. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to try something. I'm going to take responsibility for every single thing in my life. And by doing this, this actually saved his life. And not to say that like everything that happened to him is his fault. We talked about this in the past. Not saying it's his fault because things are going to happen to you. It's not your fault. But to take responsibility for everything kind of gave him this purpose. Like, oh, I can kind of be in charge of the way I feel about my life. It's like this existential thing, and that kind of got him out of his depression. So it was kind
Hmm.
of a nice little story. Um,
I thought you were going to say his intention for wanting to commit suicide is he wanted to become a spirit and
and
haunt
then study
people
himself.
instead. Have people
Yeah, it was
study
like
him.
what is it? He is an interesting guy though. He talks a lot about truth and how it's hard to like truth is constantly changing, and that's maybe what like interests him in this, right? Like what we were talking about before. If someone was having an epileptic seizure and some, priest came around the corner and like started praying and it made the seizure go away. It's true that the prayers healed that epileptic, even though it's also true that it was just time and the brain spasms like calming
Yeah,
down a little
maybe
bit
the
or whatever it
seizure was
is,
just
right?
done.
So, so the truth kind of, you know,
Wow.
it changes
Little
as time
did
goes
he know how relevant that idea of the truth always changing would be in today's society.
on.
The
Dude, I
truth is
know.
literally always changing, and no one knows what the truth is.
Yeah, people literally use the term, and I'm gonna get take some like my truth, and and on some level there's some truth in that, right? Like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's a complicated thing to talk about, but there's some other things I took out of this is like there's spiritual disciplines that we all take place in, and I wonder, you know, if this is like these are fine to study. Like it's fine to study fasting, it's fine to study self-examination. Like no one talks about religion with any kind of like stringent criteria. And I'm not saying that that's bad. Like there's a lot of like great stuff from the Bible. Like Jesus would do this thing a lot where he would kind of go off on his own and be completely separate from, it was probably easier back then when there wasn't millions and millions of people where you could just kind of walk away and be gone. But he would go off and be by himself, which is a or with God, I'm sure, right, to talk. But that's a very spiritual practice to like just kind of take yourself away from everything. And we talk about that with meditation. We talk about that with mindfulness. And you're learning a lot about yourself when you're by yourself. In fact, maybe that's the only way you can learn about yourself, to just be away from everything. I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
something super interesting about that. We're doing spiritual experiences all the time, so I don't know.
Okay.
Um, Dave, you
So
want to talk about?
yeah, well, I had a few examples of things that might fall into the parapsychology branch that
Okay.
I was going to offer what some researchers explanations might be, but then I thought it might be interesting to kind of see where we land. Do we land on like the science end or the parapsychology end of it? So the first one being an out of body experience. So some researchers have explored these and other elements of like near death experiences as potential signs that the consciousness can exist outside of the body and after death, but others propose that instead, that such experiences result from anomalies in the brain, such as failure to integrate sensory information about the body's location. So that processing, I guess, right, isn't
Yeah.
happening, or it's happening differently at the time of that experience, which is causing that. Where do you fall on this as far
I
as out of
fall
body experiences?
So an out of body experience is a really interesting sort of phenomenon here, and the brain activity could be literally shut down, right? So you're not supposed to. And can would I buy someone wakes up and they're like, "Oh, I saw this and I saw this," like this sort of tangential things that they've seen. But for someone to come out of zero brain activity and to have this, formulated chronological account of what people were saying and what people were wearing and what was happening to them, outside of their body, that that from their point of view, it would have to be sort of an aerial point of view. Like, how do you explain that? And we talked about that with, near death experience. Like, how do you explain that situation? So it almost feels like to me, if what everyone's is saying is true, and just if the facts are just laid out there, then it does suggest that there is consciousness can exist outside of your body. And if your consciousness can exist outside of your body, that is spirituality,
That's
right?
like your soul. Yeah, it's your soul floating
Yeah.
or something like that, or whatever.
Yeah,
It.
or whatever,
I
right?
mean, there's a part of me that wonders if there's a part of us that's able to take in vision for, like, even if it's for a brief second, and it sees the surroundings, um and maybe even hear, is maybe we're even able to hear during those times or something, um and then we almost get a vision of ourselves, like, from a different perspective, but with that information we've already taken in, and somehow that creates this, like, overhead scene. I don't know, that
Yeah,
feels like a stretch. Feels really hard, feels almost as hard to believe as the fact that maybe our souls flying around looking at
I
everybody,
know,
during
I
this.
know.
I mean, both of them sound crazy, but I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. That one I don't really have an opinion super strongly on. Um, Maybe I believe you probably could have an outer body experience. What am I
Yeah,
saying?
and
Sure.
we just don't have the science to explain how that's possible.
I guess my thought at other times has been like, are we just, is the person just imagining it? And like I said, with the information that they've already somehow taken in at some
Mm.
point in that experience, are they, like, creating the vision in their mind, in their imagination? I don't know. Okay. The
Yeah,
next one.
or are they, like, hearing the people talk? Like, is their subconscious hearing the
Creating the
people
vision, but like
in it?
like you
Yeah,
said though, sometimes they'd be able to describe certain things like
yeah,
clothing. Like, how would your
I
brain
know,
know how to connect
hard.
that? Yeah, that would be hard. Um, Natural explanations for seeing ghosts. So a number of factors might help explain apparent encounters with ghosts. Um, they include physiological changes in the brain due to stress and an evolved tendency of human minds to detect intentional activity in ambiguous situations.
Okay.
I already know where you land on this. Go ahead.
You know where I land on this. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that it's possible to for something to be left behind from someone, if there's, like, enough reason for them to stay, or if they were taken out I don't know, yeah, no, I believe in ghosts. I really do.
Okay.
And maybe that's when we talked about, what was that thing where, like, the kids, they would come back into kids, and, like, the past life regression. No,
Changelings,
not
right?
changelings, but the kids that would have, like, a
Oh, the
vision
past
of.
life. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the past life. So it's like, if something was so big or unfinished business, I think there's something to be said for that, right? Or, like, even the death that was so quick or shocking or unfair, or, where I guess unfinished business is the word for it. But um, maybe your spirit's not ready to move on. Maybe it's there's something about that, something to that. I don't know. I find it interesting though.
Yeah.
And here's the thing though, we have just about as much evidence for it to exist as we do proof that it doesn't.
Yeah. I'm
you
not
know?
gonna say affirm like I don't believe in any sort of like ghost like activity being possible, but I do think more often than not, people are being deceiving themselves because maybe they can't explain something that happened or occurred.
Mhm.
I don't think it's as frequent as you know people would probably want to think. For example, something as simple as like seeing like a shadow. Like I've been getting it a lot lately. Like have a thing like a black thing move in the corner of my eye.
Okay.
It's not. I think it's. I
All
think
right.
I think we like if I was that kind of person, I'd be like, oh, there's a ghost everywhere, you know? But
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I think it kind of depends on the person's personality where they can like immediately go. But then there are other situations where I've heard stories that are absolutely unexplainable.
I wonder if there's
So
any truth to, like, having to be open to an experience to have an
yeah,
experience.
I don't know.
I wonder if that's the thing. But all right, so what about this then? This is kind of similar. Like if you went to um like like Auschwitz and all right, let me ask you this. Say you went to Auschwitz, but you didn't know it was Auschwitz. And do you think that you would feel a heaviness in that area because of all like the horrific atrocities that
I
were
don't
done there?
know. I do think that sometimes some of that stuff is also like built up in our own minds, depending on
It
our
might
own
be.
like knowledge of it. Cause like, I mean, some of the things that like I've dabbled with as hobbies and like dark places I've gone to. I mean, I've gone to some locations where some pretty traumatic things have occurred. Like I went
Sure.
to a um, psychiatric facility for um, violent and disabled people, where a lot of like really egregious and horrendous things happened. It was down south actually, and it was like a really large one. I went there. I did not feel any presence. I didn't feel anything like that. Now, had I believed in all that stuff, gone there, and would I have felt something and been like, "Oh my goodness, the air here feels so heavy"? Maybe my experience would have been different. I wonder that. I always wonder what it would be like to not be so skeptical or not be so resistant to the ideas that things happen.
Well, I mean, it's a block. It's a choice, isn't it, in a sense?
Hmm. I mean, I want to experience it, but I also don't believe it. So it's like I'm a
It's
weird
hard.
position. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hmm.
So, psychics are not parapsychologists. Let's make that very clear.
Okay.
But their abilities, but the abilities that they supposedly have, such as mind reading and communicating with the dead, involve like similar, um, attributes that we talked about or phenomena. A host of psychological factors could lead to erroneous belief in psychics' power, including confirmation bias, the tendency to selectively attend to information that confirms a pre-existing belief. I'm say right off the bat, that's exactly where I land on psychics.
Yeah. So
Uh,
confirmation bias is kind of like what you're talking about when I'm talking about Auschwitz. And I'm saying
yeah.
like if you didn't know
Would you have that same feeling?
and you think your thought is no.
I kind of believe that, but who knows?
Yeah,
For example, I went to Waco. When I went to Waco, I mean, we all know what happened there.
we do.
I went there, and I'm not gonna lie, it was eerie to me. I
Yeah.
went there, it was like eerily silent. I guess I felt there a little bit of a heaviness. I was at the compound, like the gates of the compound. I felt there was nobody there. I felt a little heaviness. However, I also know how into that story I was,
Yeah.
how much I like had, how much time I had invested in like researching it and also just like thinking about the things that had occurred. Now, had someone else gone there, not done any of that research, they probably would have been like, wow, it's really peaceful here.
Maybe. Or maybe like, if someone's walking through the jungle in Ghana and they stumble upon, Jonestown without knowing about it, and maybe they would just pass through. I feel like maybe they would be like, huh, little heaviness over here.
Why does it smell like Kool-Aid?
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like there would be something, I think. I like to think. Um, why don't you give us some obvious, this is your realm here. Give us some criticisms of this, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
All right. So critics cite lack of evidence of true paranormal activity and difficulty repeating apparent findings. One of the things that I guess like that really fit into was it ESP? I think it was like I read something about someone trying to make a case for ESP being proven, but they had difficulty like repeating it,
Yeah,
their
which makes
evidence,
sense.
or yeah. So I think that's the biggest problem with this whole thing is like it really does feel very much like everything's like a situational or like a one-off. Like
So
you
here's the
can't
thing: you're
recreate things over and over within the realm of any of this stuff. I can't say, "Hey, I'm gonna," you know. I guess if I could like move things with my mind, maybe, right? If I hone that skill, but
yeah.
do we know anyone who can do that?
No, but you're describing something interesting here. You're saying if we could, we can't, it's not something we can recreate. It's something that's super subjective to each person. Um, it's not something that is you can really research, or it's not really tangible. And it's like all these things that you're describing. So if you're describing something like that, you can say it's not true. But it's also, so you're describing ghosts that way. You're describing psychics that way. You're describing all those things that way. But that's also a perfect like description of emotion, right? This sort of intangible thing that is
But it's
subjective.
something we've almost everybody has experienced versus select people.
Right.
Majority have experienced
Okay. Well,
most emotions.
I mean, yeah.
Anger, happiness, sadness, the basics,
Yeah.
frustration, agitation, annoyance, disgust,
But where do they come from?
your
You know what I mean? Like
your
sometimes,
soul.
yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of interesting where like I think if we're completely honest, and then someone said, "I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in psychics. I don't believe in any of this stuff," and then you ask them, "Well, has something unexplainable ever happened to you?" You would have to say yes.
Because of
All of us would.
emotions.
No, I mean, not even because of emotions, but yes, that's a great point. Um, I mean, even Dave, even you were like, "What was that?" Like, there's no reason that noise should have been there. There's no reason that that should have moved
Never,
on its
that's
own.
never happened to me.
Nothing.
One
Really?
time it was a
Okay.
shadow person. It was my shadow, I'm pretty sure.
Dude, see? But that's it. That's all you need, just a tiny bit of doubt.
It was my
There it
shadow,
is.
Greg. It was my shadow.
You think, you said.
It had to be.
Yeah, now your story has completely changed to sort of make yourself feel better and comfortable in the world that you live in. You've had
I
to
would be
you,
totally cool with ghosts, man. I would
you've
be
had to
totally cool.
sell yourself this story.
Trust me, I would be totally cool with ghosts.
All right.
I wouldn't try to talk my way out of ghosts because I'm scared or anything like
Maybe
that.
it's that people that see here's the thing. Like I believe in them, but I'm not totally cool with it. And then maybe that's part of the experience where it's like someone who is completely like wishes almost that they could experience that won't, and someone who never wants to will. That's just sort of the human
Sure.
condition, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know?
I think that's probably more it.
Yeah.
They
All
know
right.
that you're scared. They know how shook you are. So
They know you're
they're
shook, and so they give you a little boo here and there,
yeah.
you know?
Um, the other criticism, they also argue that parapsychologists have not been able to rule out all natural explanations for the phenomenon they study.
Unfair.
It's, yeah, I guess.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, even in the legal system, reasonable doubt is a thing. I mean, there's areas of science where you can't rule out all natural explanations. It's like there's always room for, an anomaly and everything else in the world. Like you can't say anything's 100% effective or this or that, right?
So you know what it reminds me of in the DSM, when we go to look up like a um, diagnosis,
Hmm.
and you go down the criteria, and then it's like ruled out all other medical. It's like all other medical. Like
Yeah,
I
no
can
kidding.
rule out every single. I can't. First of all, I can't.
I'm doing brain scans now. I'm looking
Yeah,
for tumors.
but I'm sure that we couldn't say that we ruled out all medical conditions or anything else that medical that could be affecting this person.
Yeah. Yeah, so like it's
For all I
almost
know,
like
like they I don't know. There's so many things, so many
I
things.
know.
So yeah, I get it. It's like that's almost giving them this like
Credence.
unachievable kind of like expectation.
Yeah, when reality the sentence should be we could not, as scientists, completely rule out other, supernatural explanations for certain phenomena,
It's
and
like when
so
I
that
move too
there
much to
needs
the
to be a
side
separation.
and suddenly my face is gone.
I know.
Part of my
Yep,
face.
that's my
Yeah.
face. Or if I turn my head
Um,
and there's no backwards hat, my backwards hat.
wow. You're just
I
wearing
is
a
the
beanie. Cool, Greg. Nice beanie.
Thanks.
Um, it actually makes me think of like what is it, the Marfa lights? Is that what it's called in
I am
Texas?
Marfa Lights.
So there's this area in Texas where I think it's Marfa, Texas. Marfa, I'm almost positive. Um, the you at night you look out and there's these three bright lights, or there's bright lights in the sky. I don't remember. I thought it was Steven, maybe it's not. There's these bright lights in the sky, like, and people forever thought it was like aliens
Mhm.
or something crazy. Turns out it's the reflection of headlights on the highway. Oh, that's what it is. The bright lights would like move,
Yeah.
but it's the reflections of headlights on the highway. But because of like, and I can't explain exactly how this works, but yeah, look it up, Marfa lights, if you're interested in. But like, you know how long it took them to kind of figure that out? It took them a long time because it wasn't just
Yeah.
an easy explanation, because it's the way that like the lights bounce off of the highway and then it somehow projects into the sky, but it's actually because of like the incline or something, all these little factors they have to go in. But it takes like having to go do research and figuring it out and kind of coming up with all the different explanations. So the whole point of parapsychology, I guess, would be doing that. So when you
Yeah.
say you haven't ruled out all like natural causations, wasn't that the point?
No, that's
Is that what
actually
they're
like,
doing?
yeah, I didn't know where you were going with that for the longest time, but now I totally get it. Like, that's when we got the Marfa Lights. It's almost like you call in the X Files. Like, we gotta bring in the parapsychologist because this is something that we're not really,
Yes.
our science isn't understanding this.
See,
So
that's
we are bringing
that to me makes sense
that
of what
tool.
they would be doing.
Yeah,
Like they
that's
should be
cool. Yeah.
trying to figure it out. Is this something of natural causation, or is this a phenomena that we can't really explain?
Yeah.
That
Parapsychologist.
that feels like the whole point.
That feels like the whole point. Like they're missing the point of
Yeah, right.
what it's supposed to be.
Like
Yeah.
that criticism you're giving is like the whole point of what I'm trying to do here. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
We tell you that no, this doesn't, like, yes, none of those things that we study still exist.
right. So like, I mean,
And
because
this is
like,
why.
what other than that, like, what is the point of a parapsychologist? Like, um, I can move things with my eyes. I'm going to call a parapsychologist, and they're like, "Yep, he's moving it with his eyes."
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, or am I
Yeah.
calling them for like advice or like guidance or something? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I
Unless
would be
you're
calling them.
literally to fight ghosts.
Right. You
But
would you would
uh,
need them to help research this.
but isn't that what sort of like, geez, I know this thing's running a little long, but like isn't that why you call, I guess we'll call them paranormal investigators into your home, is not to sort of investigate the paranormal activity, to, in a sense, debunk it, to see that it was a surge in electricity in your
Well,
power breaker or something like that?
I would say yes. As someone who used to love the ghost shows and I don't watch them anymore, like those hunters back in the
Yeah.
day, those are the guys from Rhode Island,
Love them.
Taps.
Taps. Yep.
They were there to debunk. They were skeptics. I think they fall more in the realm of what we're talking about.
Yep.
They were skeptics who would come in and they would debunk. And at times they would say, I have no feasible explanation for this. I believe that this is something paranormal. However, nowadays, everybody's watching like Ghost Adventurers where there's no debunking. There's, oh crap, a noise. And it's
I know.
like, this is, and then you got like Zach Baggins yelling at ghosts, which
You don't
the
yell at
ghost hunters
ghosts.
would tell you do not do that. You don't
No.
do that. So I
Truth.
think it's like, I think those are two separate like ways of looking at it. Like there, I feel like healthy skepticism is good.
I think
I
so.
would fall more into like that realm. I'm skeptic, but also I'm open to
Interested.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested and I'm open to it. I want there to be something more.
Especially there's like a great story, and then like you're like,
Sure.
okay, this is why people are kind of like falling into this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. All right. Well, that's
So
parapsychology.
that is parapsychology. We had a really nice fan mail today. which I
Okay.
wanted to share. Okay. So this is from Tyler in Westchester, Pennsylvania. He wrote, I love listening to you guys. You both have very informed and intuitive opinions. Greg and Dave, y'all are erudite. Did I say that right? Erudite, humble, and honest. And I had to look up that word. So
What
Tyler,
does it mean?
you are smarter than I. It's essentially just like well informed reach, like because we've done our work,
Not with the
research, I guess,
not with the
something along those
vocab.
lines. So it was good word, good word.
Yeah, great
I'm
word.
going to
Yeah.
try to use that, and just want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right first. Anyways, I was thinking about I was thinking about the topics of unremembered trauma, especially before episodic memory, as well as finding purpose in the modern era versus having purpose thrust on you in previous centuries. Thank you, Tyler. Tyler,
Uh,
awesome,
yeah.
awesome topics. Thank you for the kind words. Those mean the world to us. Truly feel undeserving, but
Thank you.
those topics are great.
Yeah, the second topic is essentially describing to me the cause of like existential anxiety across the sort of
Yeah.
whole human experience these days.
And
Like,
that
you know,
first one is good too. Unremembered trauma, I think, is super like interesting. I actually had a patient kind of ask me this question, like, because they felt like they had something happened, but there was like this memory gap they're going through. And part of it was like, well, if it did or it didn't happen, at this point, if you don't remember it, does it matter? Like,
yeah.
is there a way that you move on? Like, why does it feel like there were so many questions that were coming out when we were talking about this? And it's just an interesting topic. So I hope we do get into those.
Yeah, that's a I hope we get into it too because like that is where I would start like with a person like that is acceptance and commitment therapy, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, yes, that could have happened, and we can like spend our life kind of focusing on that, and like, but since we're like so focused on this thing that may or may not have happened, are we losing focus of the person we want to be and the life we want to live?
Right.
And
Right.
so yeah, so it's like that can be there. Like we can accept that to be there, and still sort of move forward. That's something we could talk about. Um, but interesting though, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Whether you're listening to us on audio or you're now watching us on YouTube, we appreciate this so much. We're just going to ask you the same thing that we ask you every time. Wherever you're listening or watching, please leave feedback, leave a rating, review. We really need your help. We
Mhm.
do need to try to continue to reach a wider audience to keep the show going. I mean, we really hope that we can start to expand a lot more. We're hoping that the video offering brings in more viewers so that we can just continue to expand the show and go in the direction that we foresee our future with this
Yeah.
show. And this what we're doing now is awesome and we love it and we love the feedback that we've been getting, but we feel like there's way more room for us to grow here. And we just need your help. And it's a really simple ask. We just need you guys to subscribe, follow, leave comments, simple things.
Host? Host?
Oh yeah, share the show. Whatever you feel you
Tell a
have the
friend,
energy.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you have the energy to be able to offer. We also have our subscriptions page, which is like a monetary like assistance thing to help us grow the show. That money is going to go into just trying to establish things that will help the show in the future. So yeah, those are different ways you can support. But we just ask, please do if you feel so compelled, please do. It would mean the world.
Even if it
But
is just telling your friends, "Hey, give this podcast a listen."
yeah,
Share like
but
sharing it.
record that conversation, share it on social media, and let everybody know. Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but yes, anything is just all we ask. But yeah, thanks for listening. We will see you next week. Have a great night, day,
Yeah.
morning, whenever you're listening. A lot of
Sure.
mornings, sure. So have a good day. Just remember, Greg loves you.
I do. I need
Dave
you.
does too. Wink, wink. Oh, I can actually wink too.
They can see you wink, yeah, so you can just say
Yeah.
it.
All right, everybody. Good night.